Andrea, we played some audio that you had the other day that you posted on X. I follow you on X, and I saw the story, and I was like, this doesn't seem legal. There was a tiny house village, and you identify, along with some people who, do those gentlemen live there that were showing you around?
Yes.
Tell the audience what you found, and then we'll give the update to the story, which is even more surprising than the original story.
Well, these are low barrier, meaning drugs are allowed inside. There's no requirement to enroll in services, shelters known as tiny house villages. And I had a client there. A client is somebody who enrolls in We Heart Seattle's case management load. We might buy them phones or connect them to family and other basic needs. And so I was there doing a visit, and on his own, often people want to tell us what's going on inside the villages. And it caught me actually by surprise to have this like blatant tiny home that volunteers built that was designated, as he pointed out, to specifically use fentanyl and with your dealer.
And with your dealer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on its face, that would seem to be not something that I imagine that taxpayer-funded things should be used for. Like, taxpayer dollars should not be going towards facilities where you can do drugs with your dealer. Am I wrong about that? Is that just an old-fashioned value of mine, or is that something that's actually illegal?
Well, I mean, I've been doing this for 5 years, in and out of low barrier priorities and, housing projects, and it still catches me off guard, knowing drugs are allowed, knowing that we're harboring drug dealers and giving them free housing for life in permanent supportive housing and tiny house villages where they're allowed to deal to their neighbors. And they're not, supposed to do it out in the open, but it is happening, and it was in my face. And of course, our client pointed out that, people use to not, overdose alone and potentially die. So this is all in the name of what we call harm reduction.
Sure.
And I say to that, there is no harm reduction to fentanyl other than to just stop using it. And there's no intervention. There's no proactive intervention from a case management standpoint to help people get off drugs. It's the meet people where they're at until they're ready philosophy. And when your dealer is your neighbor, I find that to be an impossibility in the name that this is a place where people stabilize.
Can you tell, just for anybody in the audience who may not be familiar with your organization, what is it that sets you guys apart from, say, so the city wants to, like Katie Wilson right now, Mayor of Seattle, she's proposing 3 new bills. She wants to add 1,000 beds. I assume that they're all low barrier or no barrier, additions, so somebody could still be on drugs or whatever. What sets you guys apart from the city's philosophy versus what We Heart Seattle tries to do?
So the city's philosophy is adopted through the 2013 policy change at the federal level, which is housing first. Housing, no questions asked. There's no housing second. It's just get a roof over your head, put the oxygen mask on. If everybody just started there, then things would stabilize and people would make good choices to reach self-sufficiency. What happened was, of course, billions went in, homelessness exploded, and as a organization that's private funded, so that's the biggest differentiators, we're private funded, but we shadow the government. We pick up trash, we help the homeless, we restore public safety, we act as an alternative to calling the police, we do community work orders to do interventions for people in crisis, squatting in buildings, vacating people from properties, stairwells. So we have private contracts to do that kind of work.
Sure.
So philosophically, I didn't know 5 years ago that I was stepping into something that had so much philosophy around it, and learned for myself, for my own boots on the ground, that there's nothing humane about allowing somebody to use drugs on public property and with our taxpayer dollars to be destroyed and eventually go downhill. I've never seen anybody look better once they were inside some of these low barrier shelters. They deteriorate, they lose weight, they lose their teeth, they steal more, they steal from the neighbors to support their drug habit. I mean, Mayor Wilson wants to stand up 1,000 more beds, and she's 100% in partnership with Lehigh to stand up tiny house villages. So do people know that that means we are essentially giving people a place to do drugs instead of the streets?
And Spike, I know you have a question, but
Go ahead.
I just want to get to the update on the story was, so you do this video, you showcase for everybody to see that, look, there's a designated spot for somebody to do fentanyl and meth or whatever you're doing with like a designated place with the drug dealer. It seems very predatory to me and very unfair to somebody who's addicted to drugs than like make them live next door to somebody who's selling them the product that's killing them. But that's a side point. And then, so you highlight this, and then the response is that, are they going to fix the problem? What was the response?
Well, unbeknownst to me, apparently I was already on some kind of banned blacklist. And once I found that out as well, I mean, I had been holding on to that video, frankly. And as I was exiting the other day, they were like, by the way, you're not supposed to be in here. You're banned because you say things about us and you did video about us, which was like on another story that was regarding a tiny home that had mold in it and what have you. And so then I was like, oh, I'm banned? Well, then let me actually show you what I really have.
Wow. So you're banned because
yes.
They didn't like the negative coverage of what's actually happening.
Yeah,
there.
And I'm outspoken. I put it on my social media pages. I retweet stuff that's exposing kind of the underbelly of the low barrier housing projects and what they do to the communities, especially with these bills that we're passing that, put these anywhere. There is no zoning barriers anymore to put tiny house villages in all of our neighborhoods.
A lot of people may not be aware of that. That just got passed.
95% of the people in these tiny homes are using fentanyl. What do they do all day to support their drug habit? They will rip you off. That's the reality that I don't know why these legislators and our own governor do not realize they will wreak havoc in our communities.
Where do you get that number? You said 95% of people in these tiny villages are using fentanyl?
Yeah, I got that from the people that live there. And
is there any scientific basis for that, or is that just anecdotal?
That
seems to be, I'm not pushing back.
No, it's okay.
That seems to be an unbelievable claim.
That comes from a resident of a tiny house. It comes from my own knowledge of who's going into the tiny houses.
There's no basis in that, Andrea. There's no basis. 95%? That's ridiculous.
In some villages.
But that's a different statement, and I'd like to see evidence of that. I'm not condoning drug use in the villages. I've listened to your points of view, and they're valid, and the concerns you have are genuine, and they're heartfelt, and you're in your efforts of helping a community. But I do see some value in low barrier housing. I know that it creates a whole different set of issues, but you talk about getting people off the streets and out of doorways and in front of businesses. If it's just going to be that they're going to be required to go clean before they're ready to go clean, and I'm not getting into the struggles of addiction with you, but if they're off the streets and they're out of in front of businesses and they're out of doorways, they're in a tiny village, that is a benefit to the community that these tiny villages are put into. They're not on the street. And I'm with you about the little drug shack. When Jake and I brought this up a week ago, I'm thinking, do you want a community that's using fentanyl, all over the place in these tiny villages? Do you want them in every corner of the tiny village, or would you rather they were segregated into one little place? I mean, ideally, there wouldn't be any fentanyl.
Not at all.
Ideally, there wouldn't be any fentanyl in these communities, but that's an unrealistic.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Why? Why do we not hold them to the standards that we hold the rest of the public to?
Because
it's illegal.
Because at that point, I'm not arguing that. Because at that point, they're still going to be on the streets.
So if somebody's doing something illegal, somebody's speeding and putting other people at danger, what do we do with those people?
That's a totally. Of course,
we lock the difference. We have rules and laws for a reason. Why do we have rules and laws? And if you're not going to follow rules and laws that you don't like, then what's the point of rules and laws?
My point being, if the idea is to clean up our streets, to keep our business community safer,
yes,
then put these people. Then they're going to have to put them somewhere. And if they're not ready to get clean and sober, they're going to still be on the streets. And if there isn't a little shack in the corner of the tiny village where people are using drugs, they're going to be using drugs all over the tiny village, in front of families, in front of kids, or whoever it may be.
Andrea, jump in here, please.
Well, there's dozens and dozens of tiny house villages, and you're right, not all of them are drug-riddled.
Thank you.
There is a sortation process, families, people that have children. Chief Seattle Club runs a really great one in Ballard I've been to, and it was no drugs allowed at all. There are tiny villages that have restrictive requirements. They try to.
They're gatekeepers, and I've said that numerous times. I'm all for that. The reason I'm a proponent of tiny villages.
That's what I just said. Is don't have drugs in these places. Why is that restrictive? You're saying that's fine now. 2 seconds ago.
I'm not saying it's fine. I'm saying you're making you want progress, not perfection.
I don't think that the voter at large knows that the tiny house villages are harboring our drug dealers and drug users, and they're using the fentanyl inside their own house as well, not just the designated shack, but they can use drugs inside their cute little tiny house that says, "Welcome home," and they turn into dark, grim, expensive coffins often because people are overdosing. In this village, they had so many deaths by overdose, they decided to create a designated shack so you wouldn't use a loan. So they were trying to keep people alive. That's
and I get it's a horrible situation, but it really is. That's better than people dying alone.
But then when we go to the Hope Factory and we build tiny houses, we should tell the volunteers from Microsoft and the good feel-good volunteer groups, including my Rotary Club, some of these villages are for people who use fentanyl, and that we give some of these houses are used to use in the name of harm reduction. I don't think they're sold rainbows and unicorns and baby drives and diaper drives, and that these are just great, wonderful places that are in that. And I'm with you. I believe we have to have incremental places for people to go, except for I know this. They don't actually stay inside their tiny houses. They're out in the parks using anyway, because there's no requirement to do any programming. So,
and I'm with you 1,000% on that. I think complete services for a community suffering from drug addiction or mental health crises deserve more than just a place to lie down and die. Mm-hmm. They deserve services that include treatment of their mental health issues and their drug addictions. I'm with you 1,000%.
And it's compulsory. I mean, I didn't see 5 or 6 people come out of their offices until I was being banned. Like, people are there if people want to enroll in services. It's not compulsory. And I don't think when you have the mayor and Sharon Lee up there saying, oh, we're going to turbocharge these new shelters with all kinds of wraparound services, it sounds really great. But the fentanyl addict is not required to go and say, hey, I think I'm ready now for treatment. When their dealer, I mean, it is so predatory. My friend Mike Matzik died inside a Plymouth building, and he was a schizophrenic that was warehoused with fentanyl dealers, and he got preyed on for his $700 a month check. He was not a drug addict when he was put inside Plymouth housing. That is why I'm sounding the alarm that we need to do better.
The part of your video that spiked that we talked about last week, which I was completely amazed by in a horrible way, was the fact that when you walk by that little drug shack, the guy says, well, it's empty right now because it's the end of the month and nobody has any extra
money left. Yeah.
All their money has been sucked up by these people who are doing bad drugs and who are selling them drugs and who are just sitting there like a spider and wait as the rest of these poor addicted souls are caught up in a spider's web.
Yeah.
And you're putting them all. That's the problem that I have with the spike, and where you and I disagree vehemently
and
about
what's that
this.
money that I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a detail of more services, more stamp cards, more cash benefits, and those are used for drugs. Not all, but let's be honest and real about these wonderful services enable the rampant drug-friendly culture we have in Seattle. Sorry, Bellevue does not have these problems.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing is, fentanyl is like 100 times more dangerous and addictive than heroin. I mean,
I'm aware. Yeah.
It is easily available, and when you're putting these people right next door to a dealer, and when they know that the dealer's right there, that to me is like you're forcing the hens to room with the fox. I don't understand why everybody seems to be okay with that.
How is that stabilizing?
It's not stabilizing. It puts them in direct line of fire.
I'm not claiming it's okay. I'm not claiming it's stabilizing. Mm-hmm. I'm saying at some point you're going to have to get people off the streets and out in front of businesses and doorways. You make incremental changes to get these people help. Mm-hmm. And there's not a perfect system, bud. Mm-hmm. But requiring people to be clean and sober, I'm with you. I think it'd be great if people were required to have services before they're offered some kind of shelter. I'm of that mind myself.
Okay.
But that's not the reality that we're living in these days.
It's amazing to me that they're able to achieve that in some cities and not others that are separated by a light rail train. Mm-hmm. It's not as if this is a whole different state. And you don't see this problem in Bellevue.
The fact that it's not in Bellevue is because it's allowed here. It's much easier for them to just come here and do what's allowed here.
No, it's because it's not allowed in Bellevue.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Because it's allowed here.
Okay, so we don't allow it in Bellevue, and it works. Deterrence works. If you arrest people for doing illegal things, they stop doing those illegal things, or they move along. Isn't that a better solution?
What I'm worried about with the 1,000 shelters is, and I've asked council members, like, who are they for? Who are they for? Because the service-resistant people that are in Lewis Park, Dr. Jose, 12th and Jackson, 3rd and P, half of them already have housing or have a tiny house or have already been through that cycle, been there, done that. Mm-hmm. They're service-resistant. And so then I would say to the mayor, aren't we just opening up more supply for more inflow? And without an inflow plan, we're never seeing the improvement. I 100% would, give them an incremental place to go. But why isn't that actually working? We keep getting, the numbers keep going up and up and up and up, despite more and more shelters and more DESC buildings and more of all of it.
More funding, everything.
grimly, we've lost 7,200 people to death, so we don't need space for them anymore.
Yeah.
So where's everybody coming from?
So your input is valuable. You've got on-street experience. You've got hands-on experience, life experience with us. Are you being listened to at the city when you tell the mayor these things? Are you getting an audience?
I have met with her right hand in charge of homelessness. He spent 90 minutes with us in our office, and that is a lot. He grilled us. He got inside our heads, why we feel the way we do.
Are you going to have an ongoing relationship with this department? Because you've got experience and knowledge that's going to benefit them finding a solution that works for everybody in the city. Mm-hmm. Not just the people who don't want to look at drug addicts, but the drug addicts and homeless themselves.
Yeah, and the feds have said if you want HUD funding, you have to tie treatment more to services. Now, tied to, is it required, is it not? And that will be determined. But instead of pivoting and saying, yeah, we should put at least one clean and sober village for Andrea to send her people to after she pushes treatment on them. And I'm proudly a treatment pusher. We took 3 people to treatment today in our vehicles. They're out there right now dropping people off.
Are none of the facilities required to have barriers? Are none of the facilities available or have barrier requirements?
No, I mean, that's because the grant says you can't have barriers or you won't get the funding. And so now the feds have said, we're going to pivot away. We want you to make treatment some element compulsory. And what did we do? We sued them and said, no, we want to double down on the way that we've been doing it. I take big issue with that. And why now I'm a little bit at war. I've got more video that will blow your mind of people just using these tiny houses as trap houses, smoking fentanyl, methamphetamines, and I have the content now. I will be dropping it this week, and it will blow your mind that this is how these villages are being used. And they're going, ha, 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 ha. Thank you for this free service. And plus, nobody's asking us if we want, pushing treatment or helping us get real housing. So we're mocking the system that are costing you all billions while we sit in here and kill ourselves.
And it's crazy, too, because I've been watching, I saw this comparison online the other day. Do you remember the Seattle is Dying documentary everybody was talking about a few years ago? Was that just 2019?
7 years ago.
7 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, 7 years ago. And the number has increased. I'm looking at the numbers right now, but I think the number that was counted in the video was 11,751 people in the documentary 2019. That number has increased by 88%.
Right.
Now,
we killed 7,200
and
people.
7,200 of those people died.
Yeah.
And their financing and the money that goes towards solving this problem, quote unquote, solving the problem, has dramatically increased. And yet you have almost a 100% increase. So whatever methodology that they are operating on, it's not working. The number should be going down. And
I would flip the whole program around and put money on the ground in addicts helping addicts outreach, street outreach, to say, hey, man, I did it.
Yeah.
I'm a radio guy
now.
now.
It's the only people that can tell them.
That's right. We need more addicts helping addicts on the ground, not more capacity. Take the capacity we have and empower people to cycle through it to self-sufficiency.
See, it's good advice. She's on the ground.
I'm with you.
I will trust your anecdotal advice because I think you're in the...
Some villages are that bad.
Yeah, I trust you.
Thank you.
All right. Andrea Suarez, thank you so much for coming in and for giving us an update on this.
All right,
really
join us at weheartseattle.org, folks.